Hello everybody, and welcome to your first video tutorial for web development. Today we're just going to look at making a basic HTML skeleton and getting set up with creating files, folders and using brackets effectively. So the first thing we're going to do is go into Windows Explorer, and here in my network drive I've got a folder where I've got all of the different websites I've been working on this year. So we want to have a different folder for every single website that we're creating. So I'm going to click New Folder, and I'll call this one Level 1 Intro, and take note of the naming convention I'm using as well. There's no spaces, and where there would have been spaces we're going to use hyphens, and you'll see that a lot, especially in the CSS section, so we're going to use that naming convention throughout. So there's nothing in this folder yet, and to do that we're going to create some files in brackets. So I'll open up brackets here, and you can see it'll open up to the last file that I was working in. For you it'll probably open into the default file. So I'm going to go to File and Open Folder, and then I need to navigate to the folder that I've been working in, which is this one here, and there's nothing in it, so we just click Select Folder. So now on the left here you can see, or you would see if we had any files where they would show up. So the first thing we need to do is create a new file, File New, and then Control S to save. It'll go straight into that folder that we just opened, and by convention we call our home page in our website index.html. The file extension here is really important so that our browser knows what type of file it is that we're loading up. Click Save and you can see it appears up here. Okay, so this is our working area over here, and we're going to start creating the basic HTML skeleton. The very first thing we always do is put in the doc type tag, and for HTML5, which is what we're using, this is the appropriate tag to use. Then we're going to put in our HTML tag, and you can see when you close that tag in brackets it automatically creates the closing tag for you. So if I press enter a couple of times just to move that down, will give us some space to work in. So now everything in between those two tags is nested in between the HTML tags. For convention we're going to use some indentation to make our code easier to read. It's not like Python where it actually will affect how the program runs or how the website is displayed, but it is a convention that we're going to use, and it helps us understand which parts of the content are nested under which tags in our HTML. So here the next thing I'm going to put in is the head tag. In this section here, this is where you put meta tags and links to other CSS files, maybe links to some JavaScript files. It's information that's really useful for your website, but it's not going to be displayed on your website. Then underneath we're going to put some body tags, and inside these tags is where all of the main content for your website appears. Inside the body tags there are a couple of things that we're going to use consistently throughout, so let's put those in now. At the top we're going to start with a header, and then at the bottom we're going to have a footer. So just like you'd have in a normal Word document, you have a header at the top, footer at the bottom, and both of those are nested within the body of your HTML skeleton. So now we're going to have a look at creating some information on our web page itself, and we're going to go to the header up here, and we'll put in an H1 tag. There are 6 levels of headings in HTML, H1 through to 6, H1 being the biggest and 6 being the smallest. You can of course change the formatting of those headings using CSS, but default formatting makes H1 the largest. So let's call this Mountain Life. That's going to be our big heading that comes up on our website. Now that we've got some content we can actually check to see how that's looking, and Brackets has a really useful feature, a live preview, which you can activate by clicking on this lightning bolt icon over here, and that will load up your website. So at the moment there's not much there, but if I come back to my HTML and I change the heading that I have here, you can see it automatically changes over on the right. Next we're going to add some main text to our website here, and we're going to do that by adding a paragraph tag. That's just a P, and you can see it automatically creates the closing tag for us again, and it's no longer in the header section of our website. I've borrowed some text from a different website, and I've just pasted that in there so that we have some placeholder text for our website. The next thing we might want to do is add some lists underneath and perhaps some images as well. There are 2 different types of lists in HTML. One is an ordered list, which has numbers as the bullet points, and the other is an unordered list, which has just normal bullet points, circles. You can change the formatting of those as well. So to start with, I'm going to create an ordered list, which is OL as the HTML tag. And then you need to create the individual parts of the list, and those are going to be our list items. So we call those LI. So what we're going to do is create a list here, which has some list items in it, and then has an image under each one. So we're going to create a short list of some reasons to live in the mountains. So list item number 1. And now brackets has a really useful shortcut. If you have your cursor in one of the lines like this, and you know you need to duplicate the tags, but you can't be bothered to typing them all out, you can just press Ctrl D to duplicate that line a couple of times. Now we just need to change the text that's in the middle. Okay, so I've added in some more text for my list items. And if we just change this to UL, we can see how that changes over here from numbers to bullet points. That's the difference between unordered lists and ordered lists. So the last bullet point I put in here refers to an image, so that's the next thing we're going to add in. In HTML, this is one of the few tags that actually doesn't have a closing tag, so it self-closes. So if we type in IMG, that's the name of our image. Now earlier I set up my folders with a few images in them to make this nice and easy. So in the folder that we started with, I've made a separate folder called images, and you want to put all of your images in that folder, and you'll see why in a second. I've also named them using appropriate names, using the same formatting convention. So if we go back to brackets, once I've made my image tag, we're going to add an attribute within that tag. There's lots of different attributes we can add to lots of different tags, but for our image, the first thing we need to do is the source, which we define with src. Then if we type equals on our keyboard, you can see brackets already recognizes we have this images folder, so I can just press enter, and then it also identifies all of the different files within that folder. So this is why that folder structure is really important. I'm going to click on views, and then I can close that image tag, and because it's a self-closing tag, there's no tag like that is necessary. So now if I go back to my live preview, you can see that that image has been put in place. Now the size of this image is defined by the resolution of this image here. So if you right click on it and you go to properties and to details, you can see the dimensions, the number of pixels in that image, 754 wide by 432 high. We might want to make it a little bit smaller though. So in your HTML you can actually add another attribute, for example width, and let's change that to 100 pixels. And you see that makes it a lot smaller. This is an inefficient way of doing it, because when you have the full resolution image like this but you've resized it in your HTML, you have to load up the whole image when you load the web page, and that's obviously slower and it's a big load on your bandwidth. So we don't do it like this normally. You should resize your images to the appropriate size on your hard drive before you actually add them to your website. So I'm going to delete that attribute out, but I just wanted to show you it so you know how that works. So that's going to be it for this video. We've actually covered quite a lot of different things: how to set up a good file structure, how to use brackets effectively, how to set up the basic HTML structure, and that's the same structure that you'll use in all of your websites. So once you get that set up, you can actually just copy and paste it over to every new website you create. Had a look at basic lists and inserted some images. So make sure you've got your website up to the same standard, make sure you understand how all of these different elements work, and once you've done that you can make sure you save your work and move on to the next video.